Welcome back. This week we are discussing one of the most iconic musicals and my childhood favorite, this week's episode, Annie. The red hair, the dumb dog, the belting of tomorrow. It's all there and set against the backdrop of one of the toughest times in American history, the Great Depression. But let's pull back the curtain and find out how Little Orphan Annie gave America some big hope. Annie, directed by John Huston, is based on the hit Broadway musical that itself came from the 1920s comic strip Little Orphan Annie. The movie follows an optimistic red-headed orphan who melts the heart of billionaire Oliver Daddy Warbucks. And of course, there's Miss Hannigan, played by the amazingly iconic Carol Burnett, the drunken sot of a caretaker who somehow made child neglect weirdly musical. She's awful, but also kind of iconic, right? Now here's where things get real. The movie's bright songs and big dance numbers might make it look like a fairy tale, but the Great Depression loomed in the background of Annie and was one of the darkest economic times in US history. From October of 1929 to the late 30s, millions of Americans lost their jobs, homes, and savings when the stock market crashed. Families who couldn't afford rent were forced to live in shantytowns nicknamed Hooverville, and Annie passes a couple of these during her jaunts through the city. And of course, Hoovervilles were named after then President Herbert Hoover, whose policies many blamed for both triggering the Depression in the first place and then for not doing enough to help once its impact was apparent. So when Annie sings about tomorrow, she's not just being cute, she's representing hope when American people were literally losing everything. And that's why the story of Annie resonated so much then and still does today. And of course, we can't talk about Annie without mentioning President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself, who is an actual character in the movie, played by Edward Herman, also known as Richard Gilmore from the Gilmore Girls. Now, Roosevelt became president in 1933 when the events of Annie take place, approximately from June to July 1933. Quickly into his presidency, FDR launched the New Deal, a series of programs designed to get America and American workers back on its feet. We're talking public jobs, Social Security, infrastructure projects that rebuilt the country. The New Deal resulted in numerous large-scale projects such as the WPA that built 650,000 miles of roads, 125,000 public buildings, 75,000 bridges, and 8,000 parks. The Public Works Administration constructed large infrastructure like dams and hospitals, while the Civilian Conservation Corps employed 2.5 million young men for conservation work like planting trees. The New Deal also founded cultural projects through the Federal One program that employed thousands of artists, musicians, writers, and actors. And Annie's signature song, Tomorrow, was a symbol of Roosevelt's optimism. The idea was, if a little orphan can believe in a brighter future, maybe the whole country can too. Now let's talk about Annie's world, the orphanage. In the early 1900s, orphanages were very real and often overcrowded, underfunded, and a lot less musical. Back then, child welfare laws were just being developed. The first child labor law did not go into effect until 1938, 5 years after the events of Annie. And many kids in orphanages were not technically orphans. They were dropped off because their parents couldn't afford to care for them. In Annie's case, her parents died in a house fire when she was a baby. All around really tragic and sad stuff that somehow made for a very delightful musical. Caretakers and other staff at orphanages, like Miss Hannigan in the movie, were often overworked and poorly trained. But in the case of Miss Hannigan, she was quite skilled in the craftsmanship of bathtub gin. And by the time of the Great Depression, over 100,000 children lived in orphanages across America. Programs like the New Deal eventually helped orphanages around the country improve their conditions. And by mid-century, the orphanage system began shifting toward our current foster care system. So Annie might be a very exaggerated, delightful musical, but it is based on some tough realities. And let's be honest, we all wanted to adopt Sandy the dog after watching the movie. And despite its dark backdrop, Annie became a beacon of positivity. The Broadway show opened in 1977 during another economic slump, and audiences connected instantly. The 1982 film brought this message to a brand new audience and let them know that no matter how bad things get, there's always hope and a catchy song. Because today, a lot of the news from around the world is bleak, and many Americans are again wondering what tomorrow looks like. So what do you think? Is Annie just a sweet musical or a secretly powerful story about surviving hard times? Let me know in the comments. Then go ahead and give the subscribe button a locket so you never miss a thing. We love bringing you new content, so be sure to subscribe to the Real Relationships podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. And remember, new episodes premiere every Thursday. Also premiering every Thursday are episodes on our YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky, so follow us on all of our channels so you never miss a thing. Stay safe, and remember, the sun'll come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun.